Hello, everyone. This is Greg, your host of Goddamn Gamecube, and you're listening to Season 6. If you enjoy our show, please consider following us on Spotify and subscribing on YouTube. Thank you, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Goddamn Gamecube. Greg and Riley are your hosts today, and today we're talking about Senua's Saga, Hellblade 2. Oh boy. All right, man. Let's just be honest here. I think this one is going to hurt.
Right off the bat, the title bothered me because it's reversed. It's reversed.
Yeah, it bothers the hell out of me. So here we go. Let's just get right to the facts here. Hellblade 2, a third-person action-adventure game developed by Ninja Theory and published by Xbox Game Studios in May of 2024. We previously discussed the original Hellblade released in 2017 in Season 2. If you haven't already, please listen to that episode first, as there will be some presumed knowledge in this discussion. Picking up sometime after the previous game left off, Hellblade 2 is set in 9th century Iceland, where Senua, a female warrior from Orkney, a group of islands 10 miles north of the Scottish coast, sets out to free her people from the Northmen who killed her partner. Okay, so let's start this off here. Now, do you want to go right into sound design? Do you have any opening thoughts or do you have any opening bramble here?
So I think that it makes sense because the sound design was such a big part of the first game. Do you want to kind of prime us up here? You got some prompts.
So we spoke previously at length about the innovative use of binaural audio in the original Hellblade. Let's talk about how well it's utilized this time. In my opinion, it is utilized not very well at all. I think it's far less interesting in Hellblade 2, and it's very bland. Like in the previous game, the voices constantly mucked with your ability to solve puzzles, constantly berated you in combat. Hellblade 2 is very on rails, that the voices felt meaningless, and I actually forgot that Psychosis was in the game. Did you feel this way?
Yeah, and it's a shame, and I'm going to come back to this a couple times. We unfortunately couldn't get our guest from last time back, Chuck, but who had a great line towards the end of that episode where he said, I'm curious what they're going to do, because they can't just do the same thing again, which is pretty much exactly what they do,
but worse,
but less effectively. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think, pretty much more of the same, though there are some interesting little choices here and there, like having, when you're in the cave, the voices turn to static, which was kind of scary, or having them they're often disagreeing, like your left and right ears are often in discord. And then during cathartic moments, they'll be in agreement. They'll come to some kind of resolution. I think the general sound design was pretty great. A lot of good, guttural screams and sword clanks. But really, considering how far they pushed, the envelope the first time, it was just a lot less impactful.
I do think Hellblade, what I told everyone, when I was playing through the second one, we're going to be critiquing the second one heavily, just so everyone knows. But I do think the Hellblade is a very intense experience in general. I think all the screaming and the sounds of you in combat just duking it out with enemies, it is very visceral. Whether it's swords clanking or you injuring someone or them injuring you, or just the screams and shouts of Senua doing anything is very visceral and impactful. Mm-hmm. But the binaural aspect, I think, is not very engaging anymore. Yeah. And I'm not sure, we'll talk about it possibly could be a gameplay reason. I'm not sure if it's a creativity reason. I don't really know. But let's talk about maybe the music. What do we think of the music in the game?
I really enjoyed, there's a lot more throat singing in this one, which was cool.
Yep.
A lot of pounding drum beats, especially during the fights. There are a couple sort of more tender tracks that I was like, this is kind of just cheesy. It's kind of underselling the impact of the moment. Did you feel the same way?
To me, the music didn't stand out to me positively or negatively. I do think combat has a level of intensity to the audio that has been retained.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I didn't feel one way or another about this.
Yeah, pretty much fine.
Voice acting?
I thought that, Melina Juergens is back as Senua. I thought she was terrific once again. And I am continually impressed by the voice of her father, the Shadow.
Sure.
Stephen Hartley. It's just a very deep kind of bass voice. I don't really think there were any other standouts, good or bad.
Yeah.
I also don't think there was enough variety in the dialogue, like the combat dialogue. I kept hearing the same lines over and over again.
Agreed. I also feel like for Senua being a main character and sort of conquering her demons, she never says anything. Did you notice this? There are so many vital conversations. This game is almost entirely on rails, which we'll talk about. There are so many vital conversations that she's a part of where she doesn't say anything. People are talking around her, and it's odd to me. I just feel like that she needs to say more out loud.
I think the issue was that in the first game, most of the conflict is internal.
Correct.
And they just didn't know how to... because
make it external?
There's other friendly characters in this game, and you should be talking to them a lot more, but they just don't really. She's not like projecting.
No,
like it's weird.
And I also feel like because the game is set up in a way where it's not a solo, lonely experience, it also detracts from the tone a little. It's almost like you're trying to add to the game because you don't want it to be the same as the first one, but some of those additions are making it worse.
Yeah,
like having friendly characters and people with you the whole time. I feel like does not help the game.
No, because they don't do enough with it to warrant their inclusion.
So do you want to move on to like visual fidelity? Because this game was, I'll say this game was not universally acclaimed. However, it was universally acclaimed for how good it looks. So why don't you start?
Yeah, I think it's incredible looking. It really hit me while I was playing it how crazy it is that we have this photorealistic depiction of like what was once myth.
Yes.
To these people back then. Like, can you imagine like showing them like our interpretation here of the giants or the Draugr or whatever, like to someone who lived in 9th century Iceland? It's pretty crazy. I think it's also a really colorful game, despite how gritty it is at points. The landscapes are like incredibly gorgeous, and I think the letterbox, like the black bars, top and bottom, gives it a nice like contrast, makes everything stand out more. I think the lighting in particular is really on another level, like especially with the nighttime with the fire breather guys. Like, it looks incredible.
Yep. And another particular highlight for me was in the cave.
Yeah.
Like the shadows in the water of the hands coming out of the water. That kind of stuff I thought was very interesting. And following the torchlights is very scary.
Yeah. I think some of the hallucinatory elements are really cool looking in this one too. Like the enemies in her memories are like made of like glass shards or something. Yep. It looks like the game's like breaking. And the portals that are like, it looks like composed of like copy pasted objects like a million times. It's kind of interesting. I was definitely expecting more innovation in this area though, compared to the first game. I really wish I knew how they pulled off the hidden faces thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Where it looks like a sculpted face, but when you zoom in on it, it just blends into part of the background. It looks awesome. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they did it.
Well, I do want to say, like, for as awesome as the game looks, there are some cheap visual moments, and I don't know if you noticed this. In the quote-unquote boss encounters, if you, like, achieve a failure state, you kind of just get Thanos snapped, and there's no game over screen, and you just kind of get put back to a previous spot. Like, in theory, in these boss battles, you should have either been burned to death or washed away. But, like, nothing happens.
Yeah.
It was very cheap and, like, unfinished. Did you see this shit?
Yeah. I felt like those encounters were just, like, not done.
No, they don't feel finished.
I think the actual faces and the character models look much better than last time, which was already great. Notably, I found out Melina Juergens studied martial arts and fencing and performed her mocap in full costume and makeup.
I wish they gave her something to do.
Yeah. I mean, what I have to say is that she is still the MVP. Like, she's just going above and beyond constantly. There are a lot more battle and kill animations compared to the first one, which I think was where they were like kind of trying to play up this. Oh, we have all these different animation stuff. It does kind of lead to a more dynamic and balletic kind of sense of combat. Apparently it was inspired by Game of Thrones battle scenes, but it leads to, I feel like a lot of these encounters play out as like you kill an enemy and then the next one like tackles you and then you fight that one. It's like, it just kind of
Well, even the enemy encounters feel like cinematics, where you fight an enemy one-on-one, the next one enters the screen, or the next one jumps on you, but you can't avoid it because it's scripted and blah, blah, blah.
I did think the axe throw was fucking awesome. When they throw an axe, you can like deflect it.
And when you miss it, you ever missed it and it hits your shoulder and you have to dig it out?
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
It's pretty sick.
So there were actually several buggy kill animations. Did you ever encounter any of these?
Yeah, and I wasn't sure. It's weird because like the rest of the game looks so good, but it's like that's something that always maybe bothers me a little bit more than other people, where I really think that like it's just annoying, like when you put away your sword and it's like clipping through your character model.
Me too.
It's like, it's just
I had some other stuff too where like Senua stabbed through somebody's arm, but it was really supposed to be their chest or neck.
Yeah, it
doesn't look right.
It's not lined up.
No.
Yeah.
Do you want to move on to gameplay? Any other visual notes?
That's it. I mean, I will say that the visuals are definitely the strongest aspect.
So, oh boy. So how did you feel about the seamless transitions between cinematics and gameplay?
So I was in two minds, leaning towards negative, where on one level it made me feel a little bit more connected to Senua. But whenever they do this, like in any game, I never know like when I should be pushing the control stick.
Yes.
It's like, oh, she's moving. Oh, I guess I'm the one moving her now because she's been like standing around or sitting around for however long.
I feel like there were so many moments when Senua is like squeezing herself through a rock face, but I don't know if I have to push up or not. And it happened like all the time. Did you experience this?
Way more than the first game.
Yes. I also disliked how many times the camera just panned to the sky and there's a time skip and then you just appear in the next chapter. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
It just feels kind of cheap. Like you're not really exploring the country at all. They're just bringing you there.
No. And I think that, I don't know if we're going to get into this later at all, but I'm pretty sure the first game was fairly connected.
Yes.
Like most of it was connected.
Yes.
So that's definitely a little bit of a step backwards. And except for the trials where you get the sword where you had to like teleport. Otherwise, it was like a continuous kind of journey.
Correct.
Which was more interesting to me.
All right, dude. So it's going to get ugly. So let's talk about combat or the lack thereof. I do want to start by saying there was a developer video online of the developers discussing expanding combat and combat being a focus, but I guess that didn't fucking pan out. Because the combat is actually reduced in this game. Like the amount of mechanics and how complex combat is was very simple in the first one.
Yes.
And in this game, it's dumbed down even further.
Well, so I think that I guess what they meant was the animations, because nothing else is fleshed out. And I really thought that of all the different, things that they would improve, they have a much bigger budget this time. I thought that the combat was going to be
expanded upon.
Yeah. And in reality, it's been pared back. It's just really disappointing. Like, I think you even have like one less move.
Yes. There used to be like a block break or like a kick or something.
Yeah.
What I don't know if you feel it this way. I feel like the combat was simplified so much to the point where it's actually more confusing.
Yeah.
Because I actually don't know what's effective or not, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like, did you understand like the blue parry, red parry thing? Did you get this?
Only because it was in the first one.
Yeah.
Where red parry, like you have to get out of the way.
Yes.
Or red danger indicator or whatever. Yes. But I think, what it is like, it's also, you don't have the arm rot system in the first one. Mm-hmm. So, obviously that didn't really pan out in the first one, but it was something else to think about where it's like, I have to be careful. There's only so many times I can die. Mm-hmm. I think the fights were very exciting in this game. Like especially when they're breaking up long stretches of just wandering around or doing puzzle solving and shit. But I agree, because I felt like I never got the hang of them in this one, despite how simple they were.
Yeah, I don't get it. Like it was so simple to the point where I didn't actually understand what to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, man. It's tricky.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned too, like the one enemy at a time kind of, it just like, it's very repetitive. I'm trying to think back to the first one. I believe multiple enemies are on screen at once, but you kind of turn and face one at a time. Yeah.
But they're more on screen. In this game, is it one on screen at a time?
No, but I think if I remember correctly, there's only one paying attention to you at the time. Like there's sometimes there's fighting other characters or whatever.
But in this game, it's one-on-one the entire time.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just, it feels on rails. It doesn't feel right to me.
No, you're very like locked into the enemy and you're
And correct me if I'm wrong. I also believe there's no way to move quickly forwards. Sometimes you're just slowly walking up to an enemy or just like dodging forward, and it's so dumb.
Okay, so I was wondering if I was doing something wrong.
Me too.
Because like normally when you're just running around the world, you can just hold down, you'll sprint.
Yes.
Right? Why can't you do that in combat?
I don't know.
Like, because my character would ever do is just, like you say, run a couple feet forward really fast. And it's like, I feel like if you want to have like a kinetic combat experience, like she should just be like, just
right,
running right at them and shit.
And you can't
do it, as far as I know, unless I'm doing something wrong. But
so all right, the next thing I want to bring up here, I was maybe less diplomatic than you. Like, are there no boss battles in this game? I think you argued with me that there are technically 2 of them.
Technically 3.
Well, what I would argue is, okay,
maybe 4.
If you think back to the first game, you had like Surtur and like Fenrir and
Valraven.
Yeah, Valraven, which was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And then in this game, there's fucking nothing. Like the 2 quote unquote bosses are essentially just sprinting sections that are on rails.
They're very similar to, if you've played Batman Arkham Asylum, the Scarecrow segments where you have to hide like behind cover while they do these crazy attacks and stuff.
Yes.
And there are 2 like at the beginning and end, there are is a one-on-one boss.
There's like one-on-one solo sword fights, but they're not interesting.
Well, they don't really do much different than the standard enemies.
No,
so
not at all. I thought it was very not engaging. All right, do you want to talk about the fucking puzzles? Oof.
Do I ever? I don't know how. This is another area where I expected them to change it up. Because the last one, it was their first try. It's like it much bigger budget this time. I really thought, I don't know how we're still doing the search for the symbols.
The search for the rune thing? Can you believe they copied and pasted that?
I can and I can't. I think it makes sense with respect to the story because they, at least in the first one, they made it very, kind of, okay, this is just sort of like an obsessive compulsive thing. Like, I can only... Like, I need to follow the signs. Like, it's only if the signs are right that will I be able to... But, like, this is still, I think, one of the least compelling mechanics of...
It was, like, the worst part of the first game.
And it's just, like, you didn't do it again, huh?
Yeah, I can't believe they copied and pasted this. I thought that was crazy, man.
It's not great.
All right, what about the bubbles?
There's also a new system where you can focus on these floating bubbles, which will change... your perspective.
Yep.
And you have certain obstacles appear or disappear, so you can find little orbs to put on pedestals like Rayman 2.
Yeah, I personally did not like these bubble view puzzles. To me, it felt like a cheap replacement for the Valraven stuff in the first one.
Yeah.
Remember that? Where you had to look through certain mirrors, and if you looked at them from the correct angle, the visual in front of you changed.
Yeah, like there was stairs where there weren't before.
Correct.
And then you'd have to... It's basically that, but worse.
And also, like, I remember during the Valraven sections, the voices in your head would argue with you about whether it's real or not.
Yeah,
it was
or, like,
interesting.
Call you an idiot.
Yes.
Like, oh, it's not that way.
Well, I will say this, like, I think the torch puzzles and crossing the water in the caves was scary, but, then again, I actually saw someone on Reddit deride this section as they literally made me light torches for an hour.
Yeah,
like,
and it's also Christ. That's another thing you did in the first game with the Fenrir.
You're not wrong.
And it's an effective sequence, but it's just not that engaging.
It's more copy and pasted stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So performance. How did the game perform for you? On the Series X, it's perfect. As noted, there were some visual bugs that kill animations, but that was about it.
Yeah. So I played on PC on Game Pass. I experienced many crashes when engaging with the lore markers.
I fucking skipped those. I just didn't want to do this.
I'm not really sure why. Like I basically what happened was I just activated them so I could like achievements.
Yes.
And it just ran away, and that was fine. Like it didn't crash the game. So apologies to Druth.
Yeah,
we didn't spend much time together in this one. I think the game was only struggling. It was like towards the end. There's the last area where snow is blowing around.
Yes,
it was really struggling a little bit. It was just a lot happening at once.
Sure.
Overall, it was pretty much fine. But
do you want to talk about the story?
Let's get right into it. Right.
You're into this. I guess pull off this Band-Aid. I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Chapter 1. Senua allows herself to be captured by the Northmen to prevent any more of her people from being taken as slaves and sacrifices. She is shipwrecked on Iceland and defeats the slave master. Is it Thorgester?
Yeah.
And then she takes him captive in sort of a twist of fate here.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a thing before you start.
Yeah.
In my opinion, any boss or evil character that doesn't kill you because of ego, or he's toying with you, or he has the chance to kill you but doesn't, I immediately check out.
Yeah.
There are several points during this fight where he could have killed you and just plays with you.
Yeah.
I just am checked out of that stuff.
It's really it bent it quite far for me. Like I agree with you. I generally don't like that at all. I think it's very, I don't know. I don't want to accuse anyone of being cheap, but it's just kind of like, it's very convenient that he decided that
to not kill
her. And I think it kind of pays off because his character arc, like, you know, he is ultimately, spoiler, he's kind of redeems himself a little bit. And I initially thought it was like kind of, because this is the first kind of air quotes boss fight, and he just like keeps telling her that she's worth more alive, which is like at a certain point, like, you gotta cut your losses, man. Like this woman is feral, like she's going nuts out here. But like maybe you get the impression that there's like a little bit of decency to him that was holding him back or something. But yeah, it's not great.
No, so we'll go right into chapter 2.
Yeah.
So Senua ties up Thorgester after defeating him and forcing him to travel with her.
Yeah.
And she investigates a destroyed encampment, leading to her discovery of Draugr, or these sort of zombie monsters.
Yeah.
And a Draugr ritual that raises the giant. Is it Iltoiga? Iltoiga.
Yeah.
She frees the lone surviving captive, a man named Fargrimir.
Yeah.
Right? So Thorgester informs Senua that her people have been taken captive because Thorgester is sacrificing her people to appease the giants.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I guess that's the reason behind the slavery.
Yeah. And I would say that gameplay-wise, this was my favorite part.
Sure.
I really I started headbanging during the Draugr because I was really like, we'll get into like where the direction it takes. At the first, I was like kind of not sure, and I was like, "Oh man, is this game gonna fuck?" This was great. Like these guys like breathing fire at you, and you hear the music pounding. It was just like really metal. It was really cool.
But that was an intense fight.
That was kind of my highlight for this game.
I think so. No, I agree with that. Right into chapter 3, I guess.
Yeah.
So the trio narrowly escape the giant. Say it again. Iltoiga. So they narrowly escape the giant after Senua has a tender moment with the giant.
Yes.
They arrive at Fargrimir's village, and sensing Senua's ability to quote unquote see things differently, they suggest that Senua seeks out the hidden folk who live in a nearby cave. So perhaps the hidden folk will give her a way to defeat the giants.
Yeah.
And that's the entirety of chapter 3.
Yeah, that's it. I'll take the next one.
Sure.
Chapter 4, Senua enters a cave to undergo the hidden folks' trials. Something interesting happens here where I actually think this is a positive aspect of the game, where Senua is forced to temporarily give up her sword to someone asking for help so she can make progress. And as the sword comes back to her later, she discovers that she was the person asking for help. It was like some kind of like time warp or something.
Yep.
And it's just an effective standout moment, which like the thesis that they grasp for and in this moment succeed, but in general, I think fail, is that helping others is helping yourself and vice versa kind of thing.
She's essentially like talking to herself on the other end of the phone.
Yeah, but she doesn't know it's her.
Right, correct. So in my opinion, I think I like the cave section the best.
Yeah.
Because it is very scary. It reminds me of that movie, The Descent.
Yeah.
You ever see that shit?
Yeah, it's great.
Like very intense, like the monster's actually biting you and shit. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I do like all the screaming and guttural noises when they're biting you and Senua rips them off of her. It's interesting.
Just gross little wet guys.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Yeah. This is where Senua learns that Iltoiga was once a woman named Ingen, who was forced to abandon her baby in the cave. And this is where you have the boss fight where Senua avoids these like bursts of fire and lava to break the giant's chains, and then she returns her baby's remains to her.
Yeah, I mean, I think this boss fight blows. Like, even if you can call it one, it looks really corny. I think it looks really bad. You're essentially just sprinting from cover to cover like it's Gears of War. It's really weird. And also, like, I brought this up before, like, if you quote unquote die, there is no game over screen. You just kind of get disintegrated into dust and you just do it again. It's really weird. There's no game over screen.
I honestly, I didn't know what was happening for a bit.
Me either.
Like, what do I do? Because they don't really handhold you at all.
No.
It's very just kind of here you go. But it reminded me of when you fly the bat around in Jedi Fallen Order. Like, it's not part of the central gameplay loop. They knew people were going to fuck it up a lot. So they don't even set you that far back. And it's just like, you've created like a not good encounter here.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like,
I almost think these were put in at the end.
It could be, just to give it some extra punch.
All right, you want me to take chapter 5?
Go ahead.
So Thorgester believes they can convince his father, is it the Goatee?
Yeah.
They can convince his father that the sacrifices will no longer be necessary now that they have a way to defeat the giants.
Yeah.
They are hailed for assistance by, is it Astrior? What is it?
I think so, yeah.
The leader of another nearby settlement, which has been repeatedly attacked by a sea giant. So you dispatch this giant similarly to the last one, but by avoiding ocean waves instead of lava, and you absolve him for the betrayal of Aristor's father. This sucked, right?
Well, yeah. So
what do you got here?
No, I think I agree with you. You said it looks lame, and holding on to the anchors, it just doesn't make any sense.
No.
It's it's odd that you get rid of the first giant and then like 5 feet later, it's like, there's a second giant.
Yeah.
You know, like maybe spread them out a little bit more, but as we learn, there's not a lot left of the game.
Isn't that crazy?
It's pretty nuts.
All right, chapter 6. Senua leads her companions through a haunted forest to Thorgester's village, Borgarviki, right? There is a moment where they imply you need to choose between helping two people, which turns out to not matter at all.
Yeah.
And now I could be wrong here. So I think I'm right. So like, in my opinion, there's a real cheapness and like an on rails feel to the haunted forest.
Yeah.
You literally fight nothing.
Yeah.
You solve nothing. The entire segment, you walk and do nothing, and then an achievement pops up rewarding you. It's essentially Hellblade in a nutshell, or Hellblade 2 in a nutshell, which means you watch it, you don't play it. This entire chapter, you don't do a damn thing.
No, not until you get to the village.
Correct.
But the haunted forest thing was very like, they kind of set it up to you where it's like, oh, you're going to need to choose between Fargrimir and Astria or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you get both of them.
You get both anyway.
Like, and it's, I don't know. I just, there were no puzzles. There was no combat.
No.
And then you're kind of right at the gates of the end game here.
I think you literally get an achievement for doing nothing and just kind of watching it.
Yeah.
So essentially Thorgester's father refuses to listen to him.
Yeah.
So Thorgester attempts to prevent his father from sacrificing Senua, but is killed by his father in the process.
Mm-hmm.
Senua defeats the Goatee, Thorgester's dad, in a final boss fight, quote unquote, and reveals to his people that the giants were an illusion.
Yeah.
So I said this boss also sucks. Like, it's a one-on-one duel. It's fine, but I'm very underwhelmed at all the boss encounters in this game. Do you have anything on this?
Yeah, I feel like I don't know. I thought it was, because I think that's how they end the first game as well, is that you weren't actually going to hell or trying to bring back her. You know, she's just trying to make peace with it. And I suspected that from the beginning that, you know, there wasn't really a fire giant. Like, it was just like an Icelandic volcano that they were like throwing people into or something. And like the same can be said of the ocean. But it's just like it doesn't really dovetail into Senua's actions at all.
Yes.
Like what is like making peace with this character, like giving the woman back her baby or absolving the betrayer. What does that have to do with like not sacrificing people in a volcano?
I have no idea.
You know what I mean? Like it doesn't really. I sort of see where they were going with the story, but also not at the same time. I feel like Thorgester was the most interesting secondary character. I think so this was the first time we had a companion at all in Hellblade.
Yep.
I think they should have just stuck with him specifically. Yeah. And it's like his redemption. That's like really like the interesting arc to him, instead of shortchanging both Fargrimir and Astrier, because they are just kind of like background players. I think they started out with some interesting ideas for Senua's character development. Like they acknowledge that the internal struggle continues as it would in real life, but she is making more of a conscious effort to not only keep it in control, but harness it and like what she's learned from it to help others. That's kind of the driving thrust of what they were going for. She's in opposition to the Godi, he's hallucinating as well, but he's using his own like flights of fancy to control other people instead of helping them. There's the outstretched hands imagery where on the cover art and the last frame of the game, and it's kind of just reinforcing this idea. And they're not splitting any atoms here, but the basic idea is, I guess, nice.
So do you know what's funny about that? Like, I had in my original notes that I just completely disagree with you on this point.
Sure.
And here's I guess why. In my opinion, her psychosis seems to have very little effect on the gameplay, the story, her actions, her thoughts. She never speaks. I kind of forgot it was a part of her character.
Yeah.
Like it feels kind of pointless and bland.
Yeah.
Like it has zero impact, like zero emotions. In my opinion, it just doesn't hit home like the first one.
No, not
like,
at all.
You'd think like, I understood at the beginning what they were trying to do with her character, but as the game goes on, I'm like, oh yeah, she's mentally ill, right? I forgot about that.
It's very all over like that specifically. They just did not integrate well with the idea of helping people. I think it was 100% what they were shooting for with the internal dialogue this time. I stand by the idea of liking it, but I just did not feel like it was effectively interwoven.
Let me say something else too. Like none of the other characters comment on it either. Like she doesn't admit it. They don't ask her what's wrong with her or in some way.
The only time that it comes up is then when she sees things differently.
And you think maybe it would become a conflict between her and the character she's traveling with.
Yeah,
but it doesn't.
Like what the fuck? Like you're just making shit up. You
exactly.
know? Like,
well, keep in mind it was also a conflict in the first game where she was essentially her mom or something was shunned from the village for having mental illness.
As was she.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really come up here.
No, it would have been maybe interesting if she ran into someone else from her village who was just like, oh, I remember you. You're a fucking crazy person.
Yeah,
and she
exactly.
was just like, and they kind of learned to trust her.
Exactly.
Right?
They just
would have
didn't
been
do
the
that.
move.
I can't believe we're at the end of the game already, but
you
want to talk about the conclusion?
Yes. So I am going to I'm going to start us off here. I think there is a lot of polish to the aesthetics and many thoughtful ideas that expand upon the characterization of Hellblade 1, but like at its core, I think that's where they started. But as I don't know if this was like a COVID thing or something, but it just didn't come together at all for me. I think I'm ultimately pretty disappointed that there's even less to do and how rushed the story was. Especially you talk about how they pan up to the sky and like you're just miles away after that, right? There were hints of what could have been like a morality system or even like some branching paths. Like, do you save Thorgester or not? Who do you save in the woods? But there just weren't any. And as a result, a lot of like her moral victory over the Godi at the end, like, I'm not going to be like you. I'm going to use my neurodivergence to help people, right? It feels completely out of your hands.
Yep, correct.
I have no urge to play this again.
No, I agree. I think the major point I wrote all over my pre-production is you never get to play the fucking game.
Yeah.
Like Senua rarely speaks. She rarely directs the plot. The whole game is on rails. They reused the crappy rune puzzles. The combat is even simpler. Everything is a fucking cinematic. The shitty time skips.
Yeah.
It seems like the entire game is the walking and talking from Gears of War 1 on the radio.
They should put Jack in these games.
Oh my God.
Bring him in.
Jack, rip the Stronger.
Yeah.
It's just, in my opinion, there are no boss battles, even though technically you're right, there are. Every combat encounter is one-on-one. It feels very on rails. Like the huge moments from the first game, they're just absent from this one.
The set pieces are bad.
Correct.
I like that fight towards the beginning at nighttime, but that's pretty much it.
Correct. Like, and the boss battles are shitty running segments.
Yeah.
Like, and I said this earlier, I think having compatriots maybe like hurt this game, where the first one is so lonely and miserable, it's to its benefit. Now it just feels like it's not scary anymore. But why do you think the cave was my favorite part? There's no one with you.
Else around.
There's no one around. You kind of just have to, work your way through it. Like, I wrote in here as finally, like, there's no sense of like isolation or survival. There's so much teamwork. Like, I don't know. It doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I think, like I said, they're trying to have her take more of a leadership role and interact with other characters, which is kind of like the text, but it just does not integrate with the gameplay, and it does not lead up to a satisfying, like, complete package, Sure. Okay, so, all right, dude. So my grade on this is going to be pretty bad. Do you have any last words before we say grades? And we can kind of put this thing to bed here? No, like you said, like the voiceover is good. The mocap is good. Sometimes the combat is intense. My grade is going to be pretty low. Like I said, I just want to bring it back to what Chuck said last time. I'm interested to see what they do next, because they can't just do the same thing again. And it's just what they did.
All right, dude. Do you want to do grades on the count of 3? You ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. C minus.
Okay.
Did you go C?
Yeah.
I think that's high.
Yeah.
I'm going C minus.
I see it because I gave Harold Halibut a C, and it kind of hit the same way.
Really?
Yeah. Like it's not, I wouldn't say it's boring, but it's just, it feels like a failure. You know what I mean? Like
it definitely feels like a failure.
It's like I have a hard time. This game like reviewed pretty well compared to
other stuff.
Yeah, but like in general, like the review, what is the meta? Like
mid-80s?
Like
85. Yeah, dude, to be honest, like if I were to really parse this out or be very succinct about this, you rarely get to play it. It's all on rails. The gameplay is either copied and pasted or reduced. The story's less effective, and it's not as interesting. So my grade is bad.
Yeah.
Like, and what I also think is surprising, this game was in development for a long fucking time.
That's
like,
why
what were they doing?
Well, that's why I was wondering, like, how much did COVID affect this? Because I remember they announced it, and then it was like, anybody know when this game's coming out? Like year after year.
When did this get announced? Like 2020, 2021?
It had been announced when we recorded the first episode. The trailer had come in. So was that 2020?
Wow. You mean the first episode of the show ever?
No.
Hellblade, season 2.
Is that 2020?
Probably.
Yeah.
Ish.
So it was in the can for a while, and I think just everything went into visuals and aesthetics, and I think I was just hoping for more. I mean, I don't know if do you think they're going to do Hellblade 3?
I was about to ask you, like, with Microsoft shutting down all these studios and laying everyone off, you think, what's this company, Ninja Theory?
Ninja Theory.
You think they're next?
I don't know, because the thing is that I played this game for free on Xbox Game Pass. Like, if I had spent money on this, I would have been like, I don't know, man.
Okay, so now, do you know, like, is Ninja Theory working on any other projects? Was this it? What are they doing?
I don't know. Are they going to do another DMC
oh,
spin-off?
Shit. Everyone hated that but me, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, so there is one final shout out that we want to do. So we want to shout out Jake from Instagram, who wrote in asking us to eviscerate this title. So Jake, I hope you enjoyed us killing this game.
The reaming. I hope you enjoyed it. It's I don't know. I hope you enjoyed it more than we enjoyed this game. It's so weird because I felt like we had so much more to say about the first one. It was so innovative and so memorable.
Is there anything else we're missing? Like, then again, this game was missing a lot.
The plot is very shallow.
Yeah.
It's short.
Yeah.
That's really it. I think the reason I really wanted to cover it because we covered the first one. We'd been looking forward to this for a while, seeing how it turned out. I guess we'll see if they make Hellblade 3. If I can play that one for free, sure.
It's definitely an odd strategy, though, because it was in development for so long and they put it out for free. So is it just a fucking tech demo?
That's what it feels. Didn't I compare it to Rise, Son of Rome?
I did.
Yeah.
Thank you. Holy shit. I can't believe I didn't bring that up.
It's the same thing.
I said, this is Rise, Son of Rome, Iceland.
It's to sell consoles.
And it's literally 10 years later.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what we've got on Hellblade 2. Our review is as short as the fucking game, I guess.
Yeah, it's just very insubstantial. I don't recommend it. It's a shame. I guess we'll see what the developer does next.
Yeah, okay. So I guess we'll see you next time on Goddamn GameCube, right, Riley?
Adios, folks.
See ya.
Thanks for listening.